That weekend, work had me so overwhelmed that I decided to escape the city and rent an Airbnb on the edge of a small town called Maple Valley. The place was secluded, surrounded by woods, and my phone signal was spotty at best. I thought it would be the perfect spot to relax and unwind. The cottage wasn't big, just a one-bedroom with a living room, and the kitchen was old, but the fireplace looked cozy. The only slightly odd thing was that the host had specifically messaged me, saying the back door was a bit sticky and to try to use the front door instead. I didn't think much of it. Old houses often have their quirks. I arrived on Friday evening, just as dusk was settling. I dumped my luggage in the bedroom, had a quick bite to eat, and then curled up on the sofa with a book. Outside, the wind was strong, rustling the leaves, and every now and then, I'd hear a few owl hoots. These were sounds you don't hear in the city. At first, I found them interesting, but by around 11 p.m., with everything pitch black, those sounds started to get a little creepy. I got up, drew all the curtains, checked the locks on all the doors, and made sure they were secure before heading back to the bedroom. Later that night, I woke up to a strange noise. It sounded like something being dragged outside, or maybe heavy breathing, intermittent and broken. I immediately sat up, my heart pounding. I listened, and the sound was coming from the back of the house, in the direction of that back door the host said was sticky. I held my breath, trying to make out what it was, but then, just as quickly, the sound stopped. I lay back down, trying to convince myself it was just the wind or a small animal. But before long, I heard it again. This time it was clearer, a wooden scraping sound, a creak, as if someone was gently testing the doorknob. I was wide awake, every hair on my body standing on end. I tiptoed into the living room and peered through a crack in the curtains. It was pitch black outside. I couldn't see anything. I grabbed the only thing I could use as a weapon, a heavy old vase, and tried to call the police, but my phone had no signal at all. I stood there in the living room, in the darkness, with nothing but the violent thumping of my own heart and the rustling of leaves outside. Then I heard it, very faint, but undeniably clear, a soft click. It was the back door. The one the host said was sticky. It had been opened. I heard a very slow, cautious footstep from the direction of the kitchen, each one seemingly deliberately quiet. My mind went blank, filled only with terror. I could feel it. Someone or something was already inside. I couldn't see it, but I could feel its presence, its breathing, that cold, oppressive aura slowly moving towards where I was in the living room. Instinctively, I backed away until my spine hit the wall. Suddenly, there was a bang in the kitchen, like something had fallen. Immediately after, a rapid, frantic set of footsteps charged towards me. Without thinking, I spun around, shoved the front door open, and ran out as fast as I could. I didn't even stop to put on shoes. I ran barefoot across the damp grass, with only the sound of the wind and my own gasps in my ears. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I had to leave. I ran for about a kilometer until I finally saw a road and a car's headlights in the distance. I dashed into the road, waving my arms, and thankfully the car stopped. The driver was a passing couple, and seeing my distraught state, they immediately let me in. I incoherently told them what had happened. They comforted me and drove me to the nearest town. The police arrived quickly and took me back to the cottage. The place was a mess. The kitchen table was overturned, dishes were shattered everywhere, and sure enough, the back door was wide open. What really chilled me to the bone was that the police found a fingerprint on the bedside table in the bedroom, which didn't belong to me or the landlord. Even more terrifying, in the muddy ground not far from the house, they found a set of footprints. These footprints extended all the way to my bedroom window, and there were many more footprints than when I had arrived. They speculated that the person might have been hiding inside the house before I even got there, and possibly even in my room while I was sleeping. I hadn't seen anyone, yet I almost died in a house I thought was safe. To this day, I still don't know who or what broke into my cottage that night, and I can't imagine what would have happened if I hadn't run out at that moment. That unseen, intangible presence chills me to the bone more than any tangible monster ever could. It was my third month in the old house, a Victorian-era detached home with a spacious attic. I'd bought it mainly for its affordable price and convenient downtown location. The house had some age, but the previous owner kept it well maintained, except for the attic. It was crammed with old furniture and random clutter, like a forgotten world. I'd planned to clear it out one weekend, but with work picking up, it just never happened. On a humid summer night, a heavy rain was pouring outside. I was alone in the living room reading. The fire in the hearth flickered, and everything felt vast, peaceful, and cozy. However, when I happened to glance up at the dark wood decorative cabinet in the corner of the living room, I suddenly noticed that a small ornament I kept there, a glass statue my mother had given me, had fallen to the floor. It usually stood perfectly steady, and it had been fine when I left the house that morning. My heart sank. A sudden, unsettling feeling washed over me like ice water. I was the only one in the house, and the doors and windows were all securely shut. There was no way it could have been blown over by the wind. I immediately got up, walked to the fallen ornament, and carefully picked it up. The glass was undamaged, but this illogical discovery instantly put me on edge. I started looking around, my gaze sweeping over every part of the living room, trying to find any other discrepancy. Everything else seemed normal, but the shattered sense of peace lingered. My eyes finally settled on the ceiling, the entrance to the attic. An inexplicable urge suddenly took hold of me. I grabbed my flashlight and walked to the closet in the bedroom, which held the hidden entrance to the attic. I pushed open the closet door, reached for the pull cord on the wall, and lowered the folding ladder leading up to the attic. A strong scent of mildew and dust hit me. I turned on my flashlight, directing the beam upwards. The attic was pitch black, the flashlight's beam dancing over mountains of old things. I took a deep breath and climbed up, step by step. Each rung groaned under my weight. When I finally stepped onto the attic floor, I swept the flashlight beam around. Old sofas, chairs draped in white sheets, and several dusty wooden boxes. Everything looked exactly as it had the last time I'd been up there. Nothing seemed out of place. I stood there, the light moving back and forth in the darkness, trying to find anything that could explain that unsettling feeling. In the corner, I saw a set of faint footprints, small ones, as if left by boots, extending from behind a sheet-covered wardrobe and then disappearing into the piles of old belongings. My stomach lurched. These footprints weren't mine, nor were they from an adult. My mind buzzed, and the blood in my veins instantly turned to ice. I clearly remembered that the last time I was up here, there was only an even layer of dust on the floor, with no footprints whatsoever. I didn't investigate further. I practically scrambled down from the attic, pulled up the ladder, closed the closet door, and then shoved a wardrobe hard against it to block it. I didn't sleep all night, sitting in the living room, clutching myself. When dawn broke, I immediately called the police. They came, thoroughly examined the attic, but found nothing except those small footprints. There were no signs of forced entry. All doors and windows were intact. The police suggested they might have been left by a child who used to live there, or perhaps some small animal. They tried their best to reassure me, but I knew those footprints weren't old. A few days later, I decided to clean the attic myself. I bought plenty of cleaning supplies, put on gloves and a mask, and forced myself to climb back up. I opened all the windows for ventilation and started moving the old items one by one. As I cleared the very bottom of a dilapidated toy chest, I felt something cold and hard. I pulled it out. It was a small porcelain doll wearing a faded old dress, with one eye missing and the other staring blankly at me from an empty socket. I froze. I'd never seen this doll in the house. It looked very old, and what sent an even deeper chill down my spine was a thin red string tied around its neck, from which hung a rusted small key. That wasn't the critical part. What truly broke me was remembering that when I moved in, all the boxes in the attic were scattered, but this toy chest was the only one carefully covered and hidden under an old blanket. I threw the doll to the floor and screamed, running out of the house. That doll, its empty eyes, and the carefully concealed box all told me one thing. Those footprints, that fallen ornament, were not caused by the wind, nor by an animal. It had been there, in my house, in a place I never imagined. I don't know what it was, but it had shared a roof with me, and it had left something behind, a reminder that I'll never forget that humid night and those footprints in the attic that didn't belong to me. This happened 5 years ago. I was working the night shift at a 24-hour convenience store. The place was on the outskirts of town, usually deserted at night except for the occasional long-haul truck driver or a drunk. I liked the quiet of the night shift. I could restock shelves while listening to podcasts. Typically, between 2 and 3 in the morning, the store was at its most peaceful, with only the hum of the refrigerators. That night was no different. A light rain was falling, making the entire world seem hazy and silent. I had just finished stocking the chip aisle and was about to mop the floor when I heard the bell above the store door chime. I looked up, expecting a customer, but the doorway was empty. Outside, there was only the sound of rain and a few blurry car lights in the distance. I figured it was just the wind and didn't pay it much mind. A few minutes later, the bell chimed again, clearer this time. I even thought I heard the faint sound of the door being pushed open and then closing. I walked to the counter and looked out through the glass door, but still there was nothing. I thought, the wind must be really strong, but a sense of unease started to settle in. The bright lights of the convenience store only made the darkness outside seem deeper and more unfathomable. I began to think, maybe it wasn't the wind. I continued mopping, but my attention was now entirely focused on the store entrance. About 10 minutes later, the bell chimed for the third time. This time, I clearly saw the doorknob move downwards, then the door opened a crack inward, only to quickly close again. I held my breath, staring intently at the door. After confirming there was no one there, I picked up the walkie-talkie, which connected to the back storage room and office. I whispered into it, "Hello? Did someone come in?" My only answer was silence. The lights in the storage room and office were off. I knew I was the only one on duty tonight. My heart started to pound. I slowly walked toward the door, intending to check the lock. As I got closer, I heard a very faint sound, like someone was just outside the door, pressed against the glass, lightly scraping their fingernails. The sound was subtle, with a strange, patient rhythm. I stopped dead in my tracks, frozen, all the blood draining from my body. I didn't dare to look, terrified of seeing a face pressed against the glass. I spun around, practically running back to the counter, and grabbed my phone. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold it. I fumbled to dial 911, and the moment the call connected, I suddenly heard a loud bang. The convenience store's glass door was violently slammed open by an immense force. The entire door frame rattled, and a spiderweb crack appeared in the glass. Rain and cold wind instantly rushed in. I shrieked, and my phone slipped from my grasp. Through the shattered door, I saw a blurry, tall figure standing in the rain, silhouetted against the distant streetlights, making its features indistinguishable. It made no sound, simply stood there motionless, like a statue, yet emanating an intensely dangerous sense of oppression. My instinct told me it was watching me. I stumbled backward behind the counter, grabbing the baseball bat I kept hidden there. My mind was a blur, all I could think about was running. The figure slowly, step by step, entered the store, its wet shoes leaving damp footprints on the clean floor. It moved deliberately, each step as if measuring the distance, with the patience of a predator. I saw its hand slowly lift, pointing towards me. The hand was large, with thick knuckles. Just then, I heard the wail of a police siren outside. The sound grew louder, piercing the silence of the rainy night. I saw the figure suddenly stop, then it turned and, with a speed I'd never seen, darted out of the convenience store, disappearing into the dark curtain of rain. The police rushed in moments later. They saw the shattered glass door and my ashen face and immediately understood what had happened. I was taken to give a statement. The police searched the surrounding area, but found nothing. No fingerprints, no witnesses, and even the surveillance cameras, being old, had coincidentally malfunctioned during that exact time. The only proof that anything had happened was the shattered glass door and the chilling cold that still lingers deep within me. The police told me there had been several burglaries on that road recently, but all were carried out very cleanly, leaving no clues. They suspected it might be the same group, but I knew that what walked into the convenience store that night was far more than an ordinary thief. It was like a ghost, a shadow, carrying a cold and pure malice. I've never worked a night shift since, because whenever night falls, I always feel that blurry, tall figure is still there, somewhere in the dark, silently watching me.